Long ago in Ireland, there lived a young man named Oisín. He was the son of the great chieftain Fionn McCool, who was the leader of the Fianna, a brave band of ancient Irish warriors. One early misty spring morning, Fionn, Oisín, and the rest of the Fianna were out hunting when they saw an extraordinary sight. It was a beautiful young woman riding on a spirited white mare. The sun glistened off the maiden's hair, casting a magical golden light. "I am Niamh of the golden hair," said the woman, in a voice that sounded like the music of a harp. "I come from a magical island called Tirnanog, a land far, far away across the sea." Niamh went on to tell them that Tirnanog was a great place where no one grew old or suffered illness. "I have travelled all this way in order to find your son Oisín, and I wish to marry him. Come with me to Tirnanog," Niamh pleaded to her newfound love. Oisín swung up behind Niamh onto the white horse, and together they crossed the sea to Tirnanog.
2 shops across the way have all closed down, and no one's even surprised anymore. Like, shops are closing everywhere. No one even cares because you're so used to it. Like,
my father had to move away for work. He moved 2 years ago, and he still hasn't managed to find a job at home. And my brother, who just turned 18, he just finished school, he moved away last week to England because he can't find even a part-time job here.
When I finished university, obviously went looking for a job, and unfortunately picked the wrong time to leave university because the economy seemed to collapse and there was nothing left in Cork or anywhere in Ireland.
Having grown up on the Emerald Isle, Oisín would never have believed that a more beautiful land existed. But as he gazed upon Tirnanog, he was stunned by the beauty around him. In this magical land, Niamh and Oisín built a life together. They spent each morning exploring Tirnanog. 300 years passed, as though it were but a day. They lived in endless, youthful moments, filled with happiness, song and dance.
I've been in London for 2 years now, and I must say it's a fantastic place to live. There's so many different people here that it's so easy to fit in. It's a fantastic place for someone to build their career. I know I am, as along with many other Irish people over here.
In spite of the beauty of the land and the deep love that Niamh and Oisín shared for each other, a small part of Oisín's soul knew loneliness, and he was very homesick.
History is the beginning and the end of the Irish person. Like, the Irish are one of the few nationalities that are welcomed and celebrated worldwide, so I think that makes it easy for people to forget our troubled history. Emigration is just a deeply ingrained part of Irish society. There's 24 million people that can claim Irish citizenship, which is amazing when you think that there's only 4 million people in the country to begin with. By emigrating, I'm doing something for my country, in that I'm no longer a burden on the state. At the same time, there is still nagging guilt there that I abandoned my home in its time of need. And in particular, I left to go to our traditional enemy. You grow up in Ireland and you're taught a lot of Irish history and all about that, about Cromwell, about the War of Independence, the Black and Tans, the Easter Rising. And it's really annoying when English people either belittle that history that's between our countries, or even worse, are completely ignorant of it. Of all the pain and suffering that so many different rulers and armies of Britain over the year have inflicted on our country. The Irish, we've had to fight so hard for everything. Like, we've had to fight to be able to practice our own religion, we've had to fight to be able to teach our own language, and finally we fought to have our own state. And now it feels almost embarrassing that after all of that we now have to immigrate. We have this sort of internal crisis of identity that, despite all the very rich Irish heritage and the Irish history that we're so proud of, all of our sports, our culture, our literature, everything that we're so proud of and we carry around with us and we wear it on our sleeves, we're also monumentally embarrassed and guilty about abandoning our home, about abandoning all that sacrifice and ignoring the sacrifice that those previous to us have made. And worse than that, we've gone and we've settled in the land of the enemy.
Such feelings were unheard of in Tirnanog, and in spite of her efforts, Niamh was unable to ease Oisín's loneliness. So, when Oisín came to Niamh and told her of his desire to return to Ireland to see his family and the Fianna again, she could not hold him back. "Return to Ireland on the back of the white mare," she said. "But my dear, "Your foot must not touch the soil of Ireland." Immediately, Oisín rode the white horse back across the sea to the land of his birth. But as soon as the mare's hooves touched Ireland's soil, Oisín realized how much the land had changed. The green wooded shores had not changed, but everything else was different. Oisín's family and friends had long passed away, and their grand castle was overgrown with ivy and in ruins.
My family moved to this farm, I believe, somewhere in the region of about 150 years ago. I'm the 8th generation of my family to live on this farm. You can really see the passage of time and the imprint that my family's made in the area. My family, much like almost every other family in Ireland, have been touched by emigration in the past. Even my grandmother, worked in Manchester during World War II making shells for the British Army. But her and like most of my family did come back, and my parents, both of them spent time in America in their early 20s, but they both came back and settled down here and lived on the farm.
I don't think any of us are ready for this. I'm glad you're emigrating.
Moving to, let's say, the UK or whatever, it's sort of like one step, you know what I mean? And then I think there is that sense that Australia or America is final.
You're working there and you're somewhat settled, it's very easy to stay there, and most people do want to stay there, which is why it's such a big move for people to go out there, because there is a certain element of, permanence attached to it.
What I kind of love about Ireland most is the crack, I don't know, and just sort of the atmosphere. It doesn't have the most things available, like shops and stuff, but there's a really nice attitude.
It's like, people talk about the 6 or 7 degrees of separation from you to anyone on the planet. In Ireland it's more like 2 degrees of separation maximum. There always seems to be some connection between people, and I really like that. It's something that you don't get anywhere that's much bigger than Ireland.
In films and stuff, the Irish are always like personified as like leprechauns. I mean, our accents, we do not talk like that.
Obviously some of the guys at work would make occasional jokes about drinking or about potatoes or about stuff like that, but it's all in good fun, like there's nothing ever mean attached to it. At the same time though, I am very aware of the previous stereotypes of Irish people abroad, so I'm careful to avoid them. I'm part of a new generation of Irish immigrants. We're all educated, we're young, we're professionals, we're working in finance and business. We're not the immigrants of 30, 50 years ago who lived in ghettos, worked on the sites and drank themselves into an early grave. We expect to be dealt with in a better fashion. We expect more from ourselves now.
My mom is Filipino and my dad is Irish. I cling to the Irish more so than the Filipino. It is back again to that sense of pride. And you're talking to American people and they say they're one name. And you're like, dude, you do not know what it's like to be Irish.
I wouldn't want my kids to be American kids going, oh, I'm Irish because my parents are Irish, and all real Irish people going, come on, because you want your kids to be actually Irish.
If I had children now, I'd definitely prefer them to be raised in Ireland. Growing up in Ireland does give you a certain outlook on the world of, we're a small country. We've always had to fight for everything we got. We've always been the underdog, and I really like that outlook that we have. The way we relate to other Irish people, which I would love my kids to have, and which I don't think they would get if I brought them up in London or in anywhere else. Of the 5 kids, there is no one really to take on the farm once my dad does eventually decide to give it up. So we're going to be left with the very difficult decision that we're going to have to sell it, which is not something any of us really ever wants to do, because it's in our blood and it's something that's very, very dear to us. So that's going to be a very, very difficult day when that day does come.
This generation, if we're going to emigrate, I think it'll be a much smaller percentage of us will come back.
We'll retain what we've created, a new Irish culture for ourselves, not the traditional culture, a culture like we're kind of celebrating right now, and it's not so much that we'll want to return to Ireland, we'll just retain the culture, or sort of gatherings like these, and wherever we can have that across the world, it'll almost be like home. So there won't be a point going home, because we'll have what we love most about Ireland with us wherever we are.
With a sad heart, Oisín turns the mare back toward the sea to return to tirnanog. Approaching the sea, he came upon a group of men working in a field. The mare's hoof hit a stone. Oisín bent down to pick up the rock. He was sure that it would ease his sadness to carry a piece of Ireland back with him. But as his hand grasped the stone, Oisín lost his balance and fell to the ground. Within moments, Oisín aged 300 years. The men went to Oisín's aid and carried him to St. Patrick. He told him about his family, the Fianna, about Niamh and the magical land of tirnanog. As Oisín ended his story, a great weariness swept over him, and he closed his eyes in eternal slumber.
On the first day of January 1892, they opened Ellis Island and they let the people through. And the first to cross the threshold to the Isle of Hope and Tears was Annie Moore from Ireland, who was only 15 years. Isle of Hope, Isle of Tears, Isle of Freedom, Isle of Fears. But it's not the isle I've left behind. Isle of hunger, isle of pain, I will never see again. But the isle